ချစ်သမျှကိုမြတ်မိုးရွှေတောင်လုံးလင်ပန်းရလေကဆင်းဆုံးစီတော့ခင်မမုန်းတမ်းမဲ့အမြဲတွေ့ကနေခြင်းခင်လှဖူးရွှင်ပြမြူကျင်စာဦးမောင်ညာသစဉ်
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. Before we start the show, just a quick reminder that in addition to our podcast feed, we also sponsor events in physical spaces like live podcasts, panel discussions, and programs featuring art, music, film, and other such mediums. And we host live events online as well, where listeners are welcome to join in. Check out our website to see if we have any live events coming to a place near you, or any virtual events that you can also join in. Or maybe you have an idea for collaboration, and if that's the case, feel free to get in touch with us and share your thoughts. But for now, let's get into today's show. Ian Taylor, thank you for joining us here at Inside Myanmar Podcast.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
So you have been around this region for some time, touching on Burma, Cambodia, Thailand, other regions. Tell us how you got your start here.
Well, long story short, I was working in the Canadian film industry for many years, late 80s, early 90s, and I hadn't had a holiday in 5 years. And one of my friends said, well, we're on a film set and it's snowing, and he said, I have friends. I just got a postcard from Thailand. My friends, they smoke opium and they just go off in the jungle on their elephant. And I said, I quit. And I quit. And I never smoked opium and rode an elephant, but I quit. I came to Thailand basically 3 winters in a row. I came and backpacked in Thailand, back when you could do it on, 300 baht a day, and just went everywhere. And in the middle of that, I did a Thai course. So I learned the basics of Thai, I could read, I knew the tone system and stuff like that. So in 93, 94, I went to this grad program, APMCP, that was run by the Canadian government in Vancouver, and was putting 30 Canadians into Asia every year, companies and embassies. It's really the strongest network of Canadians. Still to this day in Asia is the remnants of that program, which ran for 20 years. So I came with that program. It was a really intensive 1-year Asian studies thing. We did, you did language, I did Mandarin, you did MBA level finance and marketing, you did history, religion. It was a really kind of 16-hour a day for 9 months intense thing, but it was amazing because you got this incredible network. So I came here in 94, and I had kind of a normal job lined up, and it fell through. And this is the summer of 94 now. And there was an opportunity in Cambodia, and I was like, wow, Cambodia. I mean, Cambodia was really off the map at that time. Yeah. But I had done some projects on it, and I was very interested, and I already knew the ambassador. So I went to Phnom Penh, and the opportunity I had didn't work out. I wasn't the right guy, unfortunately. It would have been pretty interesting. But I ended up at the Cambodia Daily newspaper. as the business manager in really, a very interesting time of Cambodian history. UNTAC had just pulled out just a couple weeks, had finished pulling out just a couple weeks before I got there in August 94. And there was crazy stuff going on. And I ended up at this newspaper until 96. And met, there was just a lot of Robin McDowell, Gretchen Peters, James Cantor, Chris Deckard, all the people who've gone on to really, Matt Lee, illustrious careers in journalism. And so, that's how I kind of got started. And then I got hired by J. Walter Thompson Advertising in 96. And, it was kind of a heyday. All the big companies had to get into Asia. And they had to, they got these kind of global jigsaw puzzles these ad agencies really quickly had to tool up in all these little countries. So they hired guys like me who could, kind of do, in a normal ad agency, there's all these departments. But if you're running Cambodia, you're every department in one. So for a couple years, I just flew between Bangkok and Phnom Penh. But I handled Laos to a degree. I handled Burma and Cambodia. But we produced a lot of stuff here, and we adapted a lot of international material. So that was my first time going to Burma. I went to Yangon for some work in 1996.
That was the visit Myanmar year.
Was it?
Yeah.
Is that right? There's nothing, it was really not much there, like in terms of bars and restaurants. We went to a very nice, posh Indian restaurant, and then went to a little bar out in the suburbs. And and I did some work, and I was out with my clients and went to, had some amazing Burmese meals and kind of got my mind blown. But it was a whole other thing.
How so?
Just, it's like India or something, I'm coming from Cambodia and coming from Indochina and Thailand, and there's this kind of dividing line there, it seems to me, and it's kind of got a mixed with the subcontinent kind of feel. But then around, I guess it was 2002, 2003, I went on a trip. I went to Momin and I went over to Paten, or how I could only pronounce it, and I hung out in Yangon a bit. It's wildly complicated. I'm really amazed at some people that can get a handle on it.
So when you say you went there the first time and had your mind blown, were there particular experiences or incidences that even as someone as yourself that had experience throughout the region that made your time there stand out?
Not really. I was just there for a few days. I think the thing that blew my mind is just how it was so different. It really, Phnom Penh was undeveloped, but it just felt more undeveloped than Phnom Penh in a way. And, by 1996, Phnom Penh had a lot of stuff was going on. There was hotels, there were bars, there was, all kinds of, but Yangon was still very, very undeveloped to my mind. I mean, it was probably there. But just the feel, and Phnom Penh by 1996, they had really started to hack away at a lot of the jungle. It was like it was a jungle encased city, and but Yangon still felt really green, verdant. It was just exotic as hell to me. I mean, it still is.
It did until Nargis. Nargis took all that greenery away.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
When was that?
Cyclone Nargis was 2008.
Okay.
And there were, up until 2008, there were places around Yangon where you couldn't see the Shredagon. And after Nargis, so many trees fell that you suddenly had views of Shredagon all over in places that you didn't because there were so many trees. And, I go back, I arrived about a year before Nargis to live there. I'd been there before on visits. But I'll go back to some of my early just casual pictures of Yangon and, just pictures of me or friends, and you see the background and it's just like, I don't recognize this city. I mean, it went from a tropical to an arid city overnight, and that, that will never come back again.
No, it's same with Phnom Penh. When I first got there, I walked up to the top of the amazing Van designed stadium there, the National Stadium, and you're looking out at the sky of the skyline of Phnom Penh in 1994, and the tallest buildings are like temples, Yeah. And now go there, it's just I don't recognize it anymore. I mean, it's the charm. They just really, these cities had so much charm back there. Luang Prabang in 1996. I mean, they're just so charming. And, you know, I guess it's still there, but when you're comparing against 30 years ago, it's really tough, I find.
Right.
You know?
So during '96 at this time, you're helping this ad company learn about the campaigns they could do in the region. Specifically,
I was on San Miguel. San Miguel beer. We had just a huge contract with San Miguel. And in those days, you could go from number 40 to number 3 in a few months just by spending money. And it was just dumbass ads for the most part. Although we did some kind of things that were different, but for the most part, you know, it's got to be cheap, it's got to be good for your health, or you got to have a chance to win a prize. Those are the things in advertising, and in those days, right? There's no other kind of proposition that's going to work. So I did have one funny incident. We had adapted. We shot these ads for San Miguel, and we had a production house here edit the ads, and we showed it to our client. He was here to check the ad out, and one of the titles, we had these title things in there with Burmese language, was flipped upside down. So the thing was going to play the next day. We had to get a tape physically to Yangon. And so we go to the production house, we get the guy, and he flips the thing, and we go, okay, perfect. An hour later, they send the tape, and they had flipped all the ones upside down. And we're like, and then they tried to charge us thousands of dollars for making, I mean, it was just one of these situations you can't believe. But, you know, early days of advertising, they didn't even recognize the font. They don't even know what the typeface is. So, yeah, that was specifically San Miguel beer, which, you know, they spent for a few years, they got in, and then they, you know, I was only in it for a couple of years. Advertising's not really for me, but it was interesting because you got to bomb around. There was a lot of interesting people in advertising in those days. It got sucked out of other industries. Yeah, because there was just so much money there all of a sudden. And, you know, it's just never stopped, really.
Right. So then as you're doing this advertising contract and these campaigns for a little bit during those years, what then did that lead to with other projects in the region?
With me, I kind of took a break in the late 90s, and I chased a few opportunities, and that's kind of when I was getting into photography. So, you know, that was the time, and I traveled quite a bit. I traveled in Cambodia. I started taking a lot of photos, hanging out with photographers. It wasn't the most efficient use of a couple of years. I mean, I've done that, you know, a few times in my life. I had a couple of years where it wasn't the most efficient, but I think it was important. And then I came here to Bangkok to be a strategic planner in the Bangkok office here in 2000, which wasn't, you know, that was honestly the only time I've ever worked in an office in my life, beside other people in cubicles at computers, was 6 months at J. Walter Thompson in Bangkok in 2000. Other than that, I've just been freelance for 30 years and doing my own thing. But I went home for a couple of years at that point. My dad got ill. He'd never been ill. He was a small town doctor who'd never been ill in his life. And so I decided it was a good time to go home. So I went home for a few years, but started coming back to Asia 2 months a year, 3 months a year, 6 months a year. And then I realized, well, I got to pick, and I really did launch as a photographer around 2005, 2006. I thought, well, I got to pick a continent because this ain't going to work long term. And so it was natural. I never did photojournalism. I knew people who were photojournalists, and they had a different gene than I did. And they, you know, a lot of them are my best friends in photography. I don't really know many photographers. But the photographers I do know are mostly photojournalists. So I just realized, you know, I got to do something different that suits me, and that's better business. Because, you know, I know people who are great photojournalists, and, you know, they're scraping for these $300 jobs and waiting 90 days to get paid. I mean, I couldn't see how that's sustainable. So I have a business doing family photography in Hong Kong. And I did Vancouver and Toronto and New York and London and Singapore and Hanoi and Saigon. But the main business is always Hong Kong, because to me, it's just, you know, it's just an unbelievably great city, and it's beautiful, and you know, there's just so much there as a backdrop for. So I kind of took a photojournalistic kind of style, you know, no props, no studios, you know, no lighting, anything like that, just using the city as a backdrop. And, I just did that right up till the plague, basically. And I'm still doing it, but, it's been hard to get back. Hong Kong's changed a lot, but it's still Hong Kong. But that's really was my main income, was that stuff. But at the same time, I was doing projects for NGOs and big, transnationals, whatever you want to call it. I did the biggest book, at that point, the biggest photo shoot in the history of the Asian Development Bank, covering their green energy around Asia. They spent $2 billion. And so I went around, but that's when I realized, man, be careful what you wish for. Because, it's a dream project. You think, they just drop this huge project in your lap. But it's all logistics. And sometimes you get out in the field and these people are just, sometimes you have great people and then sometimes you're just completely useless. There's no photography time in these big projects. So I did a few big NGO shoots. But you're kind of out there on your own, and I realized, this is hard. I'd rather be doing kind of smaller stuff. So at the same time, I was doing a lot of volunteering. And the best thing I ever did is I went to Bangladesh for a month. And I just put myself out to the big NGOs. So I got Helen Keller International, I got CARE, Save the Children, and FHI 360, which is a USAID thing. And so I spent a month in Bangladesh. Well, I spent 2 months in Bangladesh.
When was that?
2010, so it was a while ago. But, have you been to Bangladesh?
I have not yet.
I think everybody who's interested in Burma should go to Bangladesh.
Yeah, I'm planning to this year.
It is mind-blowing. It's the most, unexpected great place. There's no tourists. There's no tourism. And the people really want you to leave with a positive impression of their place, of their country. I've never been anywhere like it. They have this saying, I don't know if it's true or apocryphal, but there's a saying in the diplomatic community that diplomats cry twice about Bangladesh, once when they're told that's where they're going next, and once when they're told they have to leave. Because it really is an intense place. But I had a chance there to go to the Chittagong Hill Tracts, which is, way up on the northeast corner. It takes a lot of approvals, government, military approvals in Dhaka before you can get up there. But I went up there and that is super fascinating because Bangladesh, 160 million people in a place the size of Iowa. It's living on a floodplain.
You must feel that.
Oh, you feel it. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But I think you're interested in people. If you're interested in people, it's the ultimate place, Because after that, I went up to Namibia, which was the opposite, like the most least densely populated country, and where you don't see anybody. And then Bangladesh, all you do is see people. But I was just going to say, the Chittagong, the hill tracts, Bangladesh is just flat. And it's like, people basically look more or less South Asian, Indian. But as soon as you hit these hills, you start driving up to the hills. And you can feel in the space of 20, 30 kilometers, you've gone from India to Southeast Asia. It's a wild, everybody looks like, they're ethnic hill people. I was working specifically with the Chakma, but there's tons of these, and they bleed over into Burma and Chinsei. A lot of them, they're really, these groups straddle, Mizoram and, and Bangladesh and Rakhine or whatever, I don't know, but a desperate poverty up there. And, at the mercy of the people from the lowlands who can just swamp them out. But, it was really, really good to get on that border as well. I didn't get to the actual Burma border because that's a little bit south of where I was, but we were at like Mizoram or one of the Seven Sisters borders, but not far. But it's all kind of that same feel. So yeah, I encourage anybody like you to get when you have a chance, just get yourself to Bangladesh. It'll blow your mind.
And so, being in Bangladesh, what impression or what perspective did that give you on Burma? How did your understanding of Burma changing by being on that side of the border?
Not really a lot. Just the realization that Southeast Asia. If you're taking the whole Southeast Asia, or kind of like, let's say, what they used to call hill tribe, ethnic minority in Thai, the Chao Kao, Pudoy, thing. That's really where it starts. So I really look at that whole region now as kind of a separate area. Northern Laos, northern Thailand, Shan State. That whole mountainous area. All those small groups. But I've never really been a deep thinker about Burma. It just was always, like I say, it was just always so unbelievably complicated to me. But I went a couple more times. 2015. Did you ever know Anthony Alderson? He had 50th Street. Did you ever go to 50th Street?
Yeah.
Well, that was a friend of mine.
I used to go to 50th Street once a year on an early Sunday morning to watch the Super Bowl. That was always my tradition. Sometimes there were a couple years I was even at monasteries during that time in my life, and I left the monastery to go and watch the Super Bowl. That was just always my connection with American culture.
Yeah, that's enough.
Strange as that
that's
sounds.
Enough. No, that's enough. Who's your team?
First and foremost, the San Francisco 49ers and Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks after that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a football guy, but I'm always interested to. Yeah, it's a passion. So my friend Anthony Alderson, who passed away a few years ago, who ran the FCC in Phnom Penh for forever.
This is the Foreign Correspondents Club.
Yeah. Sorry, the Foreign Correspondents. He had 50th Street, and so we played a huge part in my band. We went over there to play a huge party about 10 years ago. And then the next year, I was going to start a project for an NGO, but I got over there and it was just going to be, again, awesome brief, but just once you get on the ground, impossible. So I just pulled the plug. But I got to on that trip and, and spend some time in Yangon. And, Yangon's still cool, but just the whole transportation thing in Yangon's impossible.
Yeah.
Just like, I got in that time at the airport, I'm in a cab, and I'm just stuck in all this traffic. I'm like, why is this? There's no motorcycles. And the cab driver said to me, Yangon very traffic. And I was like, Yangon very traffic. That's, it's really a shame that the transportation system there is tough as it is. But, I know there's other problems. So, yeah, really that was my last, and anything kind of Burma related until I made connected with the TBC, the Border Consortium. There's I dealt with a guy Max Morge, but I'd met Jack in the 90s because my old boss from J. Walter Thompson, they were old buddies from the British Club in the 80s, and Jack got here in the 70s as a traffic planner, and he started the Border Consortium in 1984. So he's a legend on the border. I mean, he built that thing up. So it was just kind of last summer, they had their 40th anniversary of the TBC, and it was at the FCC here in Bangkok. And I had coffee with Jack. He's kind of my neighbor, actually, in Bangkok. And he told me about this, and I'm going to go to that. And I went, and it was this very well attended, the Burma people and the journos. And I was sitting there, I was going, man, when I lived in Cambodia, I knew all these people. I go to the FCC, I knew everybody. And now I'm just not connected. And I want to be, Coming out of COVID, I really want to get back into doing NGO development stuff, whatever you want to call it, non-governmental, But it's a tough market. But I just said, I'm going to volunteer. And so I was at that thing that night, and I contacted Jack afterwards, and I said, because volunteering is a tricky thing. And, people say, oh, never volunteer. Well, that's bullshit in my mind. I mean, if you want to volunteer, you can volunteer. Nobody can tell me what I can do with my time. It's just ridiculous. And because a lot of photographers are like, oh, don't give away your photos, It's like, I can do whatever I want with my photos. And so there's this, I've volunteered for big organizations. The problem is, it's easy, but they don't really appreciate it. And sometimes your stuff gets lost because they didn't pay for it. If they paid for it, they treat you more seriously. Then I've gone for the volunteering with grassroots, which is really way more interesting, but they don't know what to do with those photos. They don't have. So I was kind of strategic out of coming out of COVID. I was like, I need to find one, because I've been volunteering here for 20 years with Father Joe. He's the very famous Catholic priest, been working in the Klong Toi slum for 50 years or whatever. And I've been volunteering with him forever on and off. And those pictures get used. And that's the right size of organization for me. So I put it up to Jack. Jack was great. Jack's not day to day anymore. He's been kind of retired for 10 years, but he's still obviously, he created this whole thing, and he put me in touch with the people. And I guess there's one guy, Max Morch, who's a great guy. We never actually met face to face, but we chatted, said, okay, it's a go. It's tricky to get into these camps because they'll have to go through the Ministry of Interior or whatever. And, just as a volunteer. But so this year, in February, it took 5-6 months of back and forth, but it all happened. February, I got to go to 5 of the 9 camps on the Burmese border out of Mae Sot. God, I went first time in 1991 or something like that, and I hadn't been back. I mean, there's a lot of places that will shock you in Southeast Asia when you go back, but I think that has to be it was just a dusty little dirt road border town with, long-tail boats and coming across the river and people buying stuff from Burma. But now it's just huge. I actually been through there a few years ago, but I didn't stop. But anyway, that scam city is just wild. It's just wild. It's surreal. So, but anyway, I got to go to these camps and do this project, 5 camps. Super interesting, amazing organization. And, the TBC, they have this whole philosophy forever. Let these people run it. Don't come in and top down. You give them the know-how, you give them the budget, you let them decide how to do it. And really, it was very uplifting experience. I think it's hard. A lot of foreigners want to, I've had so many people say, hey, I want to volunteer. I'm like, they don't need you, really, unless you have a very specific skill. What they need is your money. And if you're with a big company, because obviously when I got up there, this trip, USAID, like that week, it wasn't phased out. It was just, no, the hospitals are all closed.
So you saw the immediate effect.
Immediate.
Yeah.
I didn't see them unplugging oxygen from Granny and stuff like that, but it's shocking. And because the TBC does, they provide nutrition, fuel, cooking fuel, and some building materials. Very basic, and they let them do it, and it's all they have like a card system now. It's very, very high tech, and basically all left to them. But it's just shocking. I think they have food until the end of this month, and they're literally 50 cents a day per person, $15 a month per person. But there's 108,000 people
among the 9 camps.
Yeah, and. So I did the ones in the center. I did the ones I did the 3 in Tak province, and then I did the one up in Mae Sariang and Mae Hon Son, 2. But then there's way up in Mae Hon Son, there's 2 more, or 1 more, is it? No, 2 more. And then there's 2 more down in Kanturaburi, which are apparently, they're a little bit rougher. But you have this idea of a refugee camp, and you get in there, you'll just, because you've seen stuff from the Middle East or whatever, it's people sitting around in tents waiting for lunch or whatever. No, it's just an active, bustling town with everything, kids going to school, shops, markets, agriculture, tons of people speaking English because the kids have, access to schools and the Burmese thing. Way more English than you're going to need in a Thai town. And my Thai is useless there. I thought, I'd be able to, but they understand it, but they don't speak it. Or they speak it at you with a Burmese accent, it's a hard accent, that Karen Burmese accent. So anyway, it was an amazing experience. Really amazing experience. I got some nice stuff. It's never enough. You always go, oh man, if I could have just been there at 6 a.m. instead of 9 a.m., because you're driving in, sometimes it's 3-4 hours. You can't stay out there. And, so you're driving hours, leaving at, the crack of dawn and getting there. So it's just, you get what you get. But it was, very, very positive experience. Those would be some, Jack Dunford would be an amazing guy. He's a super fascinating guy on the Burma thing. I mean, he's a pioneer. He got an MBE from from Britain for his work on, 40 years or 30 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So, just one anecdote that I don't want to forget, because you'll like this one. We're in the first, what's it called, Mala camp, the big camp, I think 40,000 people, the one nearest Mae Sot. And the guy Noel who I was working with, he goes, "Oh, we should go talk to this woman here. She speaks really good English." I thought, that was cool, I think. So go, and we go to this house, and there's a man outside, probably, 60s, 70s, and he speaks English like we're speaking English right now. And there's a kind of a nephew who's like, in his 20s. He speaks English like we're speaking. I mean, it's not like they're speaking a second language. And he's like, "We'd like to talk to you, And they're like, "Oh, he's not well, So, and so I'm like milling around, and then he said, "Okay, no, she'll meet you." So we go in this house, and there's this kind of mezzanine in the house, and there's this elderly lady. And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't come down. My knee's really sore. I can't walk anymore. I've just got a problem." She's speaking British English. Well, this woman is, somebody has to do a bigger story on this because it's really quite fascinating. Her name is Maureen Gibb. She's been living in the camp for 17 years. Her dad, Thomas Gibb, born in 1912 in Yangon, or in Burma. Her mom, Nora, was Karen. Her dad, Thomas Gibb, I think was third generation British in Burma. And he worked for the, Burma Oil Company, BOC, I think, something like that. He died in 1998. He'd never left Burma in his entire life. He never went to Thailand. He lived 84 years, but he was completely Burmese. Nora, the mom, I don't know this story, but anyway, Maureen, the daughter, she was born in 1944. So she was, but she was very frail. But she had worked for some Baptist organization. She traveled the world, but she's living in this camp for 17 years as a refugee. Here's a woman with incredible skills. I mean, she had taught English in the camps and stuff. She had an uncle. This is the kind of crazy part. There was another uncle called Will Cribb, who was born in 1930 and lived until 1937 in Yangon. I think they lived in Insane. How do you pronounce it? Insane. And he was sent away to India, I think to Darjeeling, to private school as a 7-year-old. Then went to England. He never came back to Burma. He wrote a book about Burma, about his life. He's 95, he's still alive in England, and he's never been back to Burma. So the one brother, born in Burma, never left Burma. The other brother, grew up in England, never came back to Burma, is still alive. And so Maureen does, Skype or whatever with this guy. She talks to him never met him, her uncle. Just a fascinating, and I think that the Thomas, born in 1912, had been, I think his grandfather came to, from what I can glean just from notes and stuff. I got to read this book now. I mean, just fascinating.
What's the name of it?
You don't get these kind of stories of Laos and Cambodia so much, because there's too much of a break that those old families didn't really stick around. They would have gone back to France or whatever, but that people could be there that long and be British and never literally go to Bangkok in 84 years of living in Yangon.
What's the name of this book?
Telegram from Mandalay by Will Cribb. And but this is one, I think, a very interesting story. Anyway, I meant, there's some interesting characters in these camps and some beautiful spots. At a certain point, that's the other kind of thing, working with NGOs. When I started as a photographer, an old friend from university had been her career with UNICEF, very, very senior with UNICEF. And I said, I'd love to work for UNICEF. I never got work with UNICEF, but she said, number one thing, don't do poverty porn. And that's what, that's kind of what they call it. It's not a nice term, but too many photographers come in and they want kids with the flies in the eyes and showing the desperation and all that stuff. And that's not what these NGOs need. And also, you're just not going to see that kind of thing in these camps. This is not there. And you're always trying to find the glass half full. And my I'm a family photographer. My stuff is basically positive. I mean, I can't do the negative thing. And some people can go. It's amazing how two photographers can go to the same place and come out with just completely separate, whole kind of look or feel from the thing. But
Yeah, how is that possible? I've always wondered that.
yeah, I don't know. It's it's just what you I do see it. I live here. I never shoot in Bangkok. It's just too familiar to me. But then you see these people come. Well, it really struck me when I lived in Cambodia, because in the 90s, lots of photographers flying in. They all go straight to the dump, and it's just the worst poverty porn. They go to the dump, and these kids picking through. I never went to I lived in Phnom Penh for 6 years, and I've been going back for 25 years since. I've never been to the dump, and it's just like these photo essays in the 90s of these photographers flying in. It's all about people with landmine victims and kids at the dump. And so okay, you guys can have that. And also the other easy stuff and stuff, as you know, you've done the Buddhism thing. People come in.
Yeah.
It's
it drives me crazy.
It's just like, okay, if I taught photography, it's okay, Thailand, go take pictures. Do not shoot monks. Do not shoot temples. Just try to see other stuff. And it's just like a human zoo now sometimes. Like with the.
Yeah, it's not that, I want to clarify, I'm not opposed to taking pictures of monks. I have taken many pictures.
So have I.
There's many ways that you could take those pictures. What I'm opposed to is there was a certain kind of especially Bagan scene, but we can also see them elsewhere, where I've spent so many years in Burmese monasteries and are familiar with the protocols and the rhythms and the behavior and everything else.
Amazing.
And I have seen so many photos of Burmese monks doing things that I have never seen in my life. Photos of them holding candles or a book at a certain angle.
Oh, it's all set up. It's all set up. I hate this stuff.
And I can look at a picture of a Buddhist monk and immediately know, is this a picture doing a natural activity? Even if it's a natural activity, even if it's staged, I have a little less problem with that, because I think if it is a natural activity, but you kind of want to take it in the right light or with the right angle, or could you just do that again? But they're naturally doing it, but it's a little bit of encouragement to do what they were already doing again at the right time and setting. Okay, a little manufactured, but you're at least capturing a natural rhythm. But when you're this Orientalist kind of
Orientalist is the word.
to put monks in a certain position that is according to our exotic imaginations, our fever dreams, when they're doing things that are unrecognizable to the way that monks live their life, it's insane.
It's a huge industry in Asia. This whole thing of going and Angkor Wat, also the number of monk pictures, staged monk pictures. You give them a couple dollars and they'll do anything. Kind of go stand over here, and going into these rooms and filling them with smoke so you get the rays of the light bursting through, and then holding a candle, like you say. It's just. And then there's all these places. There's the cormorant fishers in somewhere. I think it's in Yunnan somewhere. And these people all go and take the exact same pictures, and they win these photo awards. Like these are staged pictures. Human zoo.
They're fantasy.
It's human zoo. It's fantasy. It's got nothing. I remember early on, I was on some forum. This is like 25 years ago on the Intergoogle, and. What was the famous bridge in Burma? There's a footbridge, and all
in Amarapura, yeah.
And some guy won
this award. Bridge.
Oh yeah, I just saw this. Walking. No, you got there. You staged. This is all staged, and that's really why I'm not really a great. I do a lot of travel essays. I tend to hang out in Cambodia. I like going to Cambodia, but to a fault, I just can't stage these pictures. I can see them, but so much stuff is staged, and the street photography is the same thing. So much street photography now is staged, and fine if that gets you into all these magazines, if that's what they're looking for travel or leisure travel, if that's what they're after, great. But like I say, I've taken plenty of monk pictures and things, but I try and.
But then I'm thinking about this monk thing. Another thing that's interesting is. Just as you have the exotified pictures of monks doing what they never do, and then having that accord to the fantasy in your mind, there'll also be the other kind of monk picture that people love to take is a monk with a cell phone. because they think it's so crazy.
I know.
They say, isn't this amazing having this monastic figure holding this cell phone? I got a picture of him talking on the cell phone. It was like, this is a natural activity that a monk would do. Like, are you suggesting that because you take on robes that you should not have the ability to have a phone call on a mobile device? And this is the thing that, so the thing that's the reality, you're turning into this kind of, kind of fake, blend of...
I know, and it's a fantasy. I remember I was going up, this is early 90s, I was going on a boat trip out of Chiang Rai to Phang, one of these, I think, and just these little very basic villages, and we're in this kind of long tail, and you start seeing people have satellite dishes outside their little bamboo home, very big, and I said, oh, look at that, and somebody said, oh, it's so sad. I was like, how is that sad?
Yeah.
Somebody can go out and work and, do their agriculture for the day, come back, and maybe watch a football game. Or they can, how is that sad? And just from that moment, I was like, like you say, they have this fantasy. And
well, that's even worse than the fantasy, because that's having this ideal in your mind of a community that's not progressing, so that you feel good that the modernity that's touching you and also giving you opportunities, that's not a modernity that's touching this other group, so you could feel that they're holding on to some purity that is just good for your self-imagination and maybe not for their own life. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's and then the travel thing now. I mean, at least 35 years ago when you came here to travel, that time Thailand was, when I first came, it was getting, I think, 4 million tourists a year. When I moved to Phnom Penh, Cambodia was getting about 100,000. So in those days, you could meet interesting travelers, And now it's just, 40 million or 20 million. Or I think 40 million. I can't remember, but it's 4 million, 5 million in Cambodia. Everybody's just channeled. They all go to exact same places. And, you go into these forums on Reddit or whatever, traveling. Nobody, literally, hundreds of thousands of people. Nobody's going, how can I get away from backpackers? How can I meet real Thai? How can I have a real authentic? Nobody. And back in the day, that's all we kind of did, Sure, you had a Lonely Planet, but Lonely Planet was actually pretty good back then, because every little town, it gave you the one hotel. This one's 80 baht, this one's 60 baht, And then it became something kind of, telling you where to avoid more than that. I always remember the Phnom Penh in the late 90s, the whole phenomena of people walking around Phnom Penh with, they're gripping with almost a white, gripping very hard with their Lonely Planet in their hand, with their fingers stuck into the page of where they were, And I was like, wow, that's pretty wild. And then it became very common.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking, the first time I came to Bangkok was 1999, and before I had come, I was living in Japan, and so I was an English teacher at that time, and I'd heard from other expats that were there, like for the last year, I'd been hearing all these Bangkok stories, Thailand stories, and it was on my mind to think about taking that trip and what it would be like, and so it was really built up. And from some of the more seasoned travelers, this is 99, I was hearing like, oh, it's not like it used to be back in my day, and it's changed so much, and it's the way I remember it, it's all gone. And even Khao San Road, they were talking about how Khao San Road is it used to be like this, and now it's just been lost. There's nothing really to see. And I think, and now I contrast my memories today, with 1999, and it's absolutely unrecognizable from that experience. And yet my first experience was, and I had nothing to compare it to, but I was already being told that how it used to be was lost, and everything else.
It's the same. I mean, I have to make myself stop talking like that and thinking like, 'cause you do get kind of nostalgic, like Jack, from TBC, he was saying, he really does long for the old days. But you talk to Joe's like,
Joe Cummings.
Yeah, Joe's like, Bangkok's better than it's ever been right now. You can get everywhere, and there's so much cool, little places, businesses started. Of course, I mean, he was here during the 70s, 80s. I mean, but, I got here in 1990 the first time, and I kind of feel I caught the end of the real original kind of Khao San Road backpacker scene. And, you can still go to the south and go to islands that have 4 bungalows that now have 100 or more, and so my thing now is I spend all my free time really in Ranong, which is probably one of the most Burmese provinces. I was just there. I did Koh Payam for I just did this thing on LinkedIn yesterday about this. Koh Payam, that's, the untouched island. Again, it's booked up years in advance on Payam now. I got off Payam in about 2007. I was there just after the tsunami every year until 2017. There was a good music scene there, so I played a lot of music. But I've shifted over to Koh Chang next door. And that's very, very Burmese part of Thailand. The workers are Burmese, and you're just looking at Burma. But I've kayaked from there with another friend of mine, Tim Morch. We've kayaked from there to the Malaysian border twice. So I've kayaked the entire coast of Thailand, 2.5 times. So, which is, kind of a cool, unique, hard trip. But, very interesting, when people talk about all these places are packed, it's true, like everybody's channeled. But you're kayaking for a week staying on these beaches the first week, empty beaches all the way down that coast, 10 kilometers of empty beach, nothing. But then you get to Phuket and it all starts, it starts before Phuket, but you go across that bay and it's, it's tourism. Then just after you go past Krabi, it's just back to mangroves and, But have you been to Ranong?
No.
You should, you can speak a lot of Burmese there. Everything's in Burmese, and it's amazing that border is still open, and they're still doing visa runs. Wow. And if you look at the map of where all these conflicts are going on, it's all happening right down all the way, right along there. It's amazing now. Not change the subject, but what do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years? Do you think that the junta is going to fall, or the?
Well, that's the question everyone's asking, and it's not just will the regime fall, which I think is, I think more analysts are moving in the direction that it's not impossible, but going to be hard for them to sustain. Already they're controlling some, according to different reports you look at, 30% of the country or so is under their control, and seems that they're on the ground, at least when they fight, they're losing about everything they are. Of course, I think the way that
sitting ducks,
global affairs are going, there's less support going to the resistance in the months ahead, and I think more support coming to the regime. So, that's a closer Russian-Burmese relations as well. So that's to be told. But I think the next part of the story is if they do fall, and what does it mean? What does it mean if they fall? Like, what does that look like? What falls? And what remains, and how does that happen, and who are the different groups that are coming to prominence?
It's going to be chaos when it does. It's just going to be. I don't see. Yeah, and just ASEAN isn't ready for it. It's a major. The whole thing is a house of cards around here, and it's just a card that doesn't want to be pulled out of the bottom of that stack. And but things change, and I think there is some optimism that things, I know that TBC had a program taking some people back into areas that are basically controlled by the Karen again, and just having a look at what were the towns like now, are they livable now? We can go back. It'd be amazing to think that these people could actually go back home or something. It's kind of unrealistic, but I know TBC also has another push to, these people can't work in Thailand, and you got 100,000 people there, incredibly motivated. They've been doing their own thing. They're not victims. They're victims of an unfortunate situation. But these people have pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, and there's a lot of positive energy, and these people have skills. And then TBC, these people could be working. Like Thailand needs people working in factories. It needs people agricultural work. There's tons that they could be doing, and contributing to the society rather than just. And now with the USAID thing, how does a provincial health department like TAC absorb tens of thousands of people overnight, not phased out of the old system, and there was some very irresponsible reporting around it, doctors saying, well, we have to look after these people, I quit. They didn't say that. They said, we don't have the resources, we're already stretched thin. We just don't have the resources to we want to help, but how are we supposed to do it? And combined with all the scam stuff coming across the border now, like May-Saut it's all happening right there. The pressure on that little town is I mean, there's some really interesting people up there who've been there forever. You've got foreigners speaking, I heard about a couple of foreigners who completely fluent in Karen. So you get a very interesting perspective in that town, for sure.
I want to go back to when you were talking about going to the refugee camp and what you were trying to capture there. And you made a point to say that they have agency, they're self-governing, they're not victims. You also make clear that when you go there, in your words, you don't want to be shooting poverty porn. And so with the mindset that you're going into these camps, trying to capture the reality, and we talked about before, not the stage reality, but the reality of what's actually happening, what sentiments or energy or life did you want to capture and portray to show the world?
When I go into these kind of places, I'm looking for three things. I'm a portrait photographer, so I like making portraits, and because when you look at these annual reports and stuff from these big NGOs, I mean, they go, we don't need so many portraits, but when you look at the things, they got tons of portraits, and the portraits really, I'm a portrait photographer, so I'm looking to make portraits. I'm looking for operations, showing how, whoever I'm working with, this case TBC, how, meetings, the facilities that they have, the warehouses, how they're working with the local administration and supporting them. And then I'm also just looking for daily life, which is actually the hardest because, you get there, maybe there's not much going on. So that's really why you want to get there early in the morning. It's not always possible because there's just that burst of energy in an early morning, when everybody's going to school and everybody's going to work and the monks are going around collecting, and it's all going on. And then it's over. And it was getting hot when I was up there. So basically after 10 a.m. till 3 p.m., it's just siesta, basically. It's just too hot. I mean, there's some little bit going on. So, in the perfect world, I'd be able to go to one of those places and just stay for a week, and really go deep. But you get what you get. It is what it is. And I'm way happier. I'm still editing it. I've been posting some stuff, but I haven't really had a chance to do much. It's just, you got to get, close to 10,000 pictures down to a few hundred. It's a huge amount of work just the culling, But that's basically what you're looking for. Portraits, operations, daily life, in a nutshell. And, maybe you want to get a little bit of landscapey stuff too to show the setting. Mm-hmm. But again, landscape is all about timing and it's all about early light. You can't shoot that stuff in the middle of the day. But, you want to set the scene, establishing shots, as we would call in film, big wide establishing shots, just showing the setting. I mean, like I say, a couple of these camps were just incredible settings, It's almost, you feel like, well, it's going to look too nice. People aren't going to want to donate here. It looks like they live in paradise, the mountains and these streams. And so it's a little bit too much the other way. I realized, well, this doesn't look very tough, but it's still, that's what you want, You need to show something positive. I'm completely, I've worked with really dire situation, working with people with HIV, at risk of HIV/AIDS in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And I was working with hijra, transgendered prostitutes and junkies, people who've been shooting drugs 25 years on the streets of Dhaka, people selling blood who are almost dead from selling blood to buy drugs. I mean, wildly scary stuff, just for coming in. Not scary, but just kind of shocking. Yeah. But the humanity of these people, I'd have a guy who's a drug addict help me take pictures, and all of a sudden they're blocking the sun like we used to do when I was on a film set. This guy, my mind got blown working in Dhaka. I'm digressing, but it's basically the same thing: portraits, life, operations. And I want to do more of this kind of thing, and so that's why I just kind of did a volunteer. This one, I'm ready to do a bit more volunteering, and I'd obviously coming out of COVID, we all got hammered, and I got to get back into more paid work at some point. But at the same time, this is a great project for me because I've been looking for something in Thailand. I've been working on a long-term project in Cambodia for years, but this is just, the photos have meaning and they're really interesting. It's just my favorite thing to do. I'd rather go work in a refugee camp. If you could tell, you can go to a holiday in the Maldives or something. I just have nothing to do on a holiday like that.
I feel the same way.
I'd rather go, you get up in the morning, before dawn, you got somebody there in a Land Cruiser going to take you out to like the location. You don't have to go and figure it out yourself. And, that's my perfect situation. That's what I like. Some people are really good at going just out and just shooting. I need a brief. I love to have a brief. Mm-hmm. I'm not good at just wandering around the countryside taking pictures. Mm-hmm. Some people are amazing at that, mm-hmm. But I love going to small towns. I mean, I love to, just get to the corners of Southeast Asia where there's not backpackers, and because it's everywhere. People go, oh, they're all tourists. No, the tourists all go to the exact same places. Mm. They have some of them are cool and do, try and get off the beaten path, but I don't think there's any more. I think there was more people doing it 35 years ago when there's 4 million tourists a year than there are now when there's 40 million, Yeah.
It's amazing to think that Alex Garland's The Beach was 20 years ago now, right?
Yeah, 25, I think. Yeah. Was it? I think it was, because I think they were shooting that.
Right, I'm confusing the movie. The book came out much earlier, so it would have been 25 years.
Yeah, I think the movie, because I met some guys who had working on, just so I was kind of living here back in Bangkok in 2000, I met some guys from the crew. Yeah, I mean, that whole thing, yeah. I didn't see the movie, I didn't read the book.
But it's capturing a concern that was 25 years ago.
Right.
And it's only gone on from then.
Yeah, yeah. But, I've done people go, I've kayaked the 600 kilometers of the Thai coast from Burma to Malaysia twice. I've seen a lot of beaches and islands and stuff. And people go, where can you get the? And you don't find these beaches in Thailand with the palm trees out over that's not really. They have them, but anywhere like that has been swamped. I think PP was probably like that 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. But Philippines, the Philippines is unbelievable, for beaches and whatever. It's how many thousands and thousands of islands. And I did get, in 2007, I did a trip on a liveaboard up into the Mergui archipelago, Burma. And, we had the government spy on the boat, the whole thing. And you've just got this incredible batch of islands there, but luckily a lot of them don't have water, so they'll never be able to be developed. Mm-hmm. So I did have a kind of interesting experience because we had this French naturalist with us who has been living in the Mergui archipelago at the there was only one resort in those days, and he was working there. It's a dive instructor, yoga instructor, and he had some crazy, really interesting experiences with the mangroves, Lampi Island, and working with and having exposure to the Moken, the last real Moken are there, completely separated from civilization. Just like 50 families or something back then. But really, I mean, that part of Burma. I mean, you just look at a map of the Mergui archipelago. You look at the resort. You go, man, what Thailand did with like half a dozen, 10 islands, they have like 100 times. Like, what are they going to do? But like I say, but a few of them will be. I think Lampi Island is incredible. I mean, there's a few of these islands are going to be. So, if you have kids or grandkids, they're going to have that experience one last time. That's the last place in the world where they're going to be able to have that, deserted island thing one last time.
Well, when peace comes to this country.
Inshallah. But, yeah.
I want to go back to your description of taking portraits, and I understand doing family photographs, taking pictures of loved ones or weddings or people that are close to you, that having a profile, a portrait of one's face, it's bringing you closer to that loved one, to a memory of yourself and in the detail and kind of capturing those elements that you want to preserve. But I'm curious where you find the meaning and the significance in when you're not shooting, when you're not commissioned to do family portraits, but
Right.
when you're using portraits as a tool or prism to want to show the wider scene. And
Yeah.
where I want to set up this question is that, you know, for example, you're going into this Burmese refugee camp on the Thai border, and you're taking a picture, presumably, just on one's face, and that face. And I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocates
Yep.
here to set you up, but
Yep.
one could look at that by saying, well, you don't know, you know, this is just a face. It's you don't know where this is located and what's behind it and what it's doing and how it's engaged in the world. But there must be something about just the capture of the face, the faces you might look for, the emotions that you're capturing, the way that you're taking the picture, so that even though you have this isolated portrait of a face occurring, I could say, somewhat in a vacuum, it's and you're being commissioned and wanting to show the wider context of the camp behind it. And I know you are taking those pictures, but when you're focusing just exclusively on the facial features, how is that also showing what's behind it as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's a funny thing. I just have this, I only really have one skill as a photographer, is that I can get people on side quickly. And that works with the family thing, because, you know, I've got these bankers who have 45 minutes and I got to get the job done. But I also, you know, I love going to Calcutta. That's my other favorite city, is Calcutta. And I love wandering around and doing portraits. And those portraits, when I post them in the forums, the people go, they just, you know, they perform well in these online forums and stuff like that, my street portraits. So, because every portrait, in some way, it's a collaboration. And so, yeah, it's a funny thing. I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm able to just get these portraits, and I have this way of just dealing with people it's quick. That's the number one thing. It has to be quick. And I have a way of just making people, I never steal that stuff. I always ask, you know, even if I don't speak the language or whatever. If I have a fixer, I ask. But I you know, I see a lot of people calling portraits that aren't portraits. It's people just stealing photos of people. But I just have this way of being able to get them to just look at me. And, you know, I have, technically I have this look that's very shallow depth of field. So I use these fast lenses. So basically the eyes are in focus and everything else is out of focus. Technically, bokeh, you know, the overused photographic term. So that's kind of my look. So I'm all about the eyes. And the whole thing about the eyes being the window of the soul, sure. But it's true in a way. People can just look at you and it all happens in, like, I rarely spend more than 30 seconds on one of these portraits.
Do you take several shots and choose one?
Yeah. Sometimes not. But it usually, the first one's usually the best one. And because, you know, when I'm in Cambodia, I can still speak enough Khmer. I could freak them out for the first minute. They're like, wow, this, you know. But then you can just feel it. It's okay. The you know, the unique thing of this foreigner speaking at me in a bit of Khmer is starting to wear off, and that's after a minute, you know. Yeah. So I just have this I don't know what it is, but I love taking portraits, and I think portraiture, there's something you can learn about, because it's all about light. You know, it's about light in the eyes, and, you know, the background and everything like that. But I think that in a way you can't, I think it's hard to learn portraiture. You can learn part of it, but, you know, these are all just ridiculously quick portraits. But I think you can see the person in all of them, you know. Yeah, it's a funny thing, portraiture. I can't really put my finger on it. I just know that, you know, I've taken millions of photos now, and I've delivered hundreds of thousands of photos and portraits. And I feel weird sometimes calling myself a portrait photographer because it just sounds a little pretentious. But at the same time, that's what I do. I take pictures of people. I do candid portraiture. But it's fun, but it's a different skill. Working, because some of these people spend 3 hours to get one shot, you know? And I would love to develop that skill, but my thing is getting the shot in 30 seconds. That's really, and that's why I just, when I'm here, I don't know, Bangkok's too familiar now. I don't really shoot. But when I go to Calcutta, Dhaka, or Battambang, all I see are portraits. You know, that's all I see when I look at the thing. You know, yeah, it's a nice setting or whatever, but I really just want to get faces, because I think there's just something about a human face. to me, it's fascinating. I never get tired of portraits. I just, I'd like to develop, like I say, more of a studio skill and have something to do when it's like 1,000,000 degrees out and you don't want to be wandering around the countryside. But, that's, I don't try to analyze it too much. It just kind of happens. But those pictures get used, and, I still have portraits that have been used by these NGOs for like 15 years. And, so, yeah, sorry, I don't really have an answer for your question.
No, that's a great answer. That is an answer, and it's fascinating. And hearing what you said and putting it together, you're describing, one, this collaboration between you and the subject. Two, that it's more of something, it's instantaneous, yet it's not stolen. So there's that relationship as well. It's not something that's deliberated upon. It's something that's after the permission is given, the feeling is captured.
Implicit sometimes,
Right.
But yeah, I just.
It's also this the eyes being this window to the soul and this energetic field that is trying to be captured and shared then with those beyond it. And as you're saying this, it's actually making me think of what I try to do on this podcast, in the sense of trying in a different way, trying to keep an authentic relationship of energy that is being preserved past its usual lifeline. Usually when you're in a crowd and you make eye contact with someone, that's something that's lost forever or kept in a memory, which then the memory changes it. Same as with a conversation, a great conversation, you'd never remember it as it actually occurred. This is a way to share and preserve this in amber, so to speak, and let it go to others.
It's just a shutter click of a thousandth of a second, and there's something. But I try and take, you try and change up your style sometimes, because a lot of photographers can take portraits of the subject, not looking at the lens, kind of looking past the lens, and a lot of a lot of famous portraitures like that. A lot of the Hollywood stuff. The stars not looking at the camera, they're kind of looking past the camera, and I try and do stuff like that. And it doesn't really work. Sometimes I get it, but it doesn't really work for me. And then I saw Steve McCurry give a talk that I went to like 25 years ago. And Steve McCurry, the famous green-eyed girl, he's the greatest.
Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, he is the greatest portrait photographer. And he does a lot of stuff. He does documentary stuff and news and everything, but his portraits are just like Salgado. Their portraits are just incredibly special. And he's like, I have to have people looking at me when I make a portrait. So I felt okay after that, if that's how McCurry does it. I'm a minnow. I can kind of take the same thing. I like people looking, they're looking me in the eye through the lens, basically, and it's just that little snap and it's over. And then a lot of it's body language is huge, I think, especially in Asia. One book that I had to read at grad school, and I kind of a little derisive about it at the time, but it really changed my life, was Edward Hall, the concept of high and low context cultures. Do you know that? Mm-hmm. And when I went home for a few years, I had reverse culture shock.
Yeah, same here.
And, thinking of culture shock being an expected collision with the unknown, whereas when you go home, you have an unexpected collision with the known. And even here, whenever I get frustrated or something, I go, is this a high context, low context problem? And it sorts out 90% of my issues, But when you just have this, I think of high context cultures, one of the main things is just you come into every situation with a shared understanding. It's not like at home where, you start from scratch every time on everything, right? You come in, okay, we're here. Yeah. And body language is a huge part of that, I find. I mean, I can see people walking like I can see like Asian people walking to me down the street, and I go, they're Westerners. I can just tell and they go past me and they're speaking English.
Yeah, same here.
And it's just it's an implicit thing now. And but I really not implore, but what's the word I'm looking for? But it's just, there's a good Wikipedia thing on it I just saw recently on that high low context culture, and it really gets you past so many, and also just the language thing. I mean, people here, you go on, I try not to go on Reddit and these things too much, but just people complaining about taxi drivers. It's all they do. I had 2 terrible things with taxi drivers this morning trying to get here, but I just, it's what it is. But there's people here, that's like, they're the bane of my existence. I'm like, really? You look at this whole thing, and the thing that winds you up the most is taxis. If you learn the language, taxis would become like a little mosquito. Like it's just something you got to deal with sometimes. 90% of taxi drivers are great. They're interesting. You sit down and you ask them, how's it going? Where's your work? Where you come from? How long are you doing it? What did you do before? And you have these crazy great, sometimes very interesting, because a lot of them are doing second careers. They retired engineers, a lot of ex-army guys, doing it. And you can have really interesting, but if you haven't just got that one basic thing of being able to talk to people, I think it's hard. I think it's really hard to get the high context, low context thing if you're lacking the language. I think the language plays a major part.
So when you're taking these portraits and you've gone to so many different destinations among different peoples and cultures of this region in particular, and you're trying to capture this energy, trying to identify it and then capture it with this relationship that you're having with the subject, and in order to do that, you also there's some degree that you also have to identify it. You have to be feeling it yourself. And so I'm wondering, would you describe, if we can make a kind of blanket general statement, which of course is not going to be entirely true because there's so many shades of individuality, but you have talked about how just the high context, low context culture is what. And I do think it's true that, culture itself is a blanket statement. There are groups of people carry general characteristics. So I'm wondering if there's this kind of like indiscernible, intangible energy that you felt from different cultures that's come through their portraits that you might be able to put into some kind of words, if you follow my question.
Like a different kind of energy from people, you mean?
Like, for example, when you're when you're going to the camps, like when your recent trip to the camps, you were taking many portraits. Was there a common thread of energy you were capturing? And same in Bangladesh, same in Cambodia, et cetera, et cetera.
This is one thing that, it's not a popular thing right now, because it just seems that there's a lot of people who kind of like to define us. Okay, I'm different because of this. We're different. I just think we're all the same. I think we're all the same, and that's why I like working with kids, is because a kid in a refugee camp and a banker's kid living in Repulse Bay, Hong Kong, a 2-year-old, they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
They haven't learned all the bullshit that they get from the adults yet.
Right.
And that's really why I think I gravitate. Because I became a family photographer because I'm the eldest of 6 kids. And my sibs all started having these kids at the time I got into photography, and I just started doing it, and it just kind of took. Nobody was really doing natural kind of thing like that, and it just took off from there. But I just think we're all the same, and I think that this thing now with this, this is different. We're different. We define ourselves like this. I think that portraiture just sees the essence of every person, and that's the skill of a portrait. And some people are way better at certain parts of it than I am. My thing is, I like, I just like photographing people who haven't been photographed. There are people who photograph people who get photographed all the time. Celebrity photographers, this kind of thing. People who are used to being photographed. I don't like photographing those people. I find that very hard, because they already have an idea in their head of how they look. This is my side. This is how I like to, and you can just feel it right away. That's why I like The kids are great because they just forget about you. That's my other skills. I'm really good at getting people to basically ignore me also, and that's why I do the family thing. But yeah, I find we're all the same. I mean, so I don't know if that answers the question either.
No, that's one answer. So and I want to push back. So one part of this is the shared humanity, which is beautiful, and especially in children, I understand where that's coming, and even as people grow, I'm sure there's. Hey, same thing with this podcast. There's a sense of shared humanity we find in however different our stories are that we're always trying to seek out and search on here. But as with the podcast, as with photography, there's also, there's convergences and divergences. And that's where the interesting intersections come, is what is converging and what is diverging. And so if you pull back again, are there certain energetic fields you can describe of, how across Southeast Asia where you've been, where there's just a certain kind of energy emanating from these types of people that can be distinguished somewhat, not in a blanket way, but somewhat from these types of people and those types of people?
I guess I can't put my finger on it, but I know that, I was just before the plague. I was in Budapest, and I didn't really feel like taking any pictures there. And there's just something about Asia, Southeast Asia. I'm just really comfortable with it, and yeah, I don't know. If it's an Asian thing. I mean, I did a big road trip in the Tibetan part of Sichuan a few years ago, and the same, people are spread out, but I could pull over some Tibetan guy crawling to Lhasa, and I could do portraits of it. So I don't really I'm not a deep thinker about photography, and that's one thing. And some of my friends have done, courses on it, read all the books and really read all the Susan Sontag, all the theory. I'm kind of don't have that at all. I just kind of am, and I just go out there like poo, I just go out there, just am, I just do it. But like I say, it's just about this body language thing and just this relaxed thing when you meet people. I just look at them, gonna do it? And just give it the camera, and they're like, yeah. And like very few people, and it's amazing. You go to somewhere like Calcutta, have you been to Calcutta?
Yes, I have.
You like it?
Yeah, I know what you mean by what draws you there. I haven't been there recently, so I don't know.
No, it hasn't changed in hundreds of years.
Okay,
I don't think.
Okay. Well, we've talked about these other places, how much they've changed.
Yeah,
so I don't
but
know.
Calcutta. That's why Calcutta is so great.
Okay.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
But it's a time capsule. It's a crazy time capsule with no tourists and no outside. It's just the people are, people I know there. They're all like wildly educated. The Bengalis are a unique, they're a unique people. They love to argue and sit around and argue and riot together, and but yeah, like I said, I'm just not a really. I kind of have this thing. Sometimes I've tried to read some theory, and I know some photographers can just talk about photography, and I can't really.
I wasn't asking so much about photography.
No, I know, but
there's more the energetic sense of what you're getting.
Yeah, but there is and you can feel it when you're going around. You have to be that kind of candid photography. It's all about split second, having to read people in a split second. You can just tell this person doesn't want their photo taken. And it's just there are and definitely energy fields.
Yeah.
And so very rarely do I get refused. I don't go around, and just blasting. I hate that. I don't like photographing. Yeah. I did it was a great opportunity. I did a workshop with a friend who was a photographer, did a workshop in India. And it's just not my thing working around other photographers. And like these photo walks, to me, that's my idea of hell. Like 20, 30 people going around taking pictures together. That's one circle. That's a circle of hell. I don't know which one it is. It's just
another question that just came to me, because you mentioned how you have this intuitive sense of knowing who might be open to it and who isn't. Are there, as you come into contact with people that you might be thinking about taking portraits of, are there certain energy fields that are like repellent? Like either they don't, you mentioned that sometimes you might feel they don't want their picture taken, but are there, outside of that, are there kind of, sometimes do you sense some kind of dark energy or uncomfortable energy that it's not a question of their acquiescence, it's that you don't want to touch that and you get repelled away from it?
Yeah, I guess. And I have had a couple things where I've misread it, and I feel bad after that. I was photographing one guy in Calcutta, and he just went off on me, like, what are you doing coming here taking pictures of people and like this. I have a guy work. I mean, I always just get a student or somebody work me. I don't want around it. I feel bad. I don't want to, because that's cultural terrorism, and I there's enough of that going on with photographers now. So. Yeah, I don't, like I say, I'm kind of a glass half full kind of guy, so I can go in and to those situations and generally get the photos. I'm not worried. But like I say, in Bangkok, I'm a walker. I do street photography in Bangkok. I do surreptitious street photography. I do the opposite of portraiture in Bangkok. I like to walk around with a little surreptitious camera, taking pictures. I don't want anybody to even know I'm taking pictures. I don't want anybody to connect with the camera at all. I do that, and I love that kind of photography. But it's a huge waste of time. But you know, I walked thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers in Bangkok, and I just don't find portraits here. It's a funny thing. If you like, I have hardly any portraits of Bangkok. It's a weird thing. But I go to the countryside, I get them. I got more portraits in a couple of weeks in these camps than I've got in 10 years in Bangkok. So I have my spots. It's a weird thing. I have my happy spots for that. I go to Phnom Penh, I don't shoot. I go to Yangon, I don't take portraits. But if I go to the countryside, I do. I think I'm a rural guy. I come from a small town, and I think that I am generally more happy in the rural, and with, you know, I come from an agrarian town. I'm not, you know, my family weren't agrarian, but all my friends were, and I feel I have a much more comfortable thing of being out in, you know, out in small towns. I'm much more, you know. But that said, I love Calcutta, I love Hong Kong. They're like mirror images of each other to me, you know. They're opposites, and I love them both because they have energy. They're great to shoot in. They're beautiful, great food, culture. Yeah, just, you know, they're you know. But I live in Bangkok, and I love Bangkok, but it doesn't inspire me photographically at all. But I have friends here who that's all they do is they'll go and take pictures. You know, I have to have a brief. So to anybody, like, if this part makes it in, you know, I'm putting myself out there to do some more volunteering in Thailand. You're not blanket, not for everybody, but if they can pitch,
sure,
I'm happy to donate my time. It's my favorite thing to do. You know, like I say, at some point I gotta start to get paid again. But in the meantime, I love photography, and I think that, you know, the most good you can do with photography is the most good you can do with photography. If you can help to highlight a situation, and right now a big problem, and you can help bring in funding, and help those people. What better use of photography? To me, it's better than news, anything. Is, you know, that's why I find it. That's why, you know, I really wanted to do more of it. But it's just it's a tough market. I'm not a natural schmoozer, and that's what you have to. You know, you really have to do that. You know, I had a terrible experience with USAID after COVID. They just, this one, you know, somebody I had worked for, and just a cynical. So when the USAID thing, I have to separate my feelings, because I was like, yeah, you know, like, it does happen, you know, like it's not all good. There is some fat in the system there that, you know, but obviously this is way too much, and to take it out on these poor people, it's just. It's crazy, and, you know, made me a little bit crazy. I don't really think about. I try not to think about politics too much. It's just too much to think about. But right now, I you know, that the world's richest man could throw 100. You know, and that's just a tiny sliver of the Burmese border. It's a tiny sliver. Could throw 100,000 people's healthcare out into the wood chipper, quote unquote. Yeah. I mean, it's just this is not how civilization advances. This is not. We don't go forward from this. This is a step backward in my mind, and it's just not going to help anybody, and it's going to backfire big time at some point, I would think. But in the meantime, you know, these people need help now. There's food till the end of this month. Who's going to step in? Are companies going to step in? And, you know, well, we know who's going to step in, and it's not going to be the States. So until they sort it out. That's the situation.
So getting back to your experiences in Burma, you described two bookends, going in '96 with San Miguel, and then your recent trip to these camps. Is there anything in between you'd also like to mention?
Not really. Like, I went in, my problem in Burma is I'm spoiled from traveling in Cambodia and Thailand so much, and Laos, where I can talk to people. I can just talk to anybody. My Khmer's not great, but I can, you know, get pretty far. And Laos, you just speak Thai. And so I get to Burma, and I'm just frustrated.
That's the way I feel when I go outside Burma.
Yeah,
Myself,
exactly.
It's so home for me, and being able to talk to anyone I meet.
The language thing is a warm blanket, and you can just get in. And so I felt that although the level of English in Burma is pretty amazing, And yeah, I went to Momin in 2002, 2003, and I had an amazing trip there. I met a really cool guy on the train he was a jeweler. I hung out with his family there, and just traveled around that Mon State a little bit, just day trips out of there. And I went to Pétain. My pronunciation is terrible. Pétain, P-A-T, Pétain. I went there on the same trip, met some really nice people, hung out, but nothing really stuck with me. And I never made it up north. As I was saying, I have a fantasy trip I would love to do if they ever settle down. Because I said my girlfriend is from Bangkok, but her roots of her family go back to Shan State and in the Yunnan. So I would love to take her, to go with her dad back up, up into the Shan State and to Yunnan, because they migrated to Thailand, decades ago because of the desperate situation in Yunnan. Well, now they send pictures from Yunnan, his village, it's more developed than where they live in Chiang Rai, And but Shan State just seems like a really fascinating place to me. Right. And I know there's tons of. Burma, it's just so huge. The potential is so massive. And I guess have you been everywhere? Have you been up to like what's it? Bamo? What's the northern town? Bamo? No, I forget the name. But up in Kachin, have you been up into?
Yeah.
You look at that on a map and it's just like mind-boggling. But I would love to go, but again, it's a language thing, and I just feel uncomfortable. Like I'm skating along the surface, all the time. So where I'm in Cambodia, I could just pull over and chat with some old farmer. I can have a 10-minute, I can't have an hour conversation, but I could talk for 10 minutes. And just that thing, making people comfortable and getting some information. Without the language, it just feels like you're skipping along the surface. And there's this thing with photography where you feel like you're on the outside looking in, and then all of a sudden you're on the inside looking out. And that's the point where you feel, okay, now I'm in the zone. I'm just good. And you'll get more, sometimes you get, you get more pictures in, like, maybe it's you're in the zone for 10 minutes, maybe it's a couple days, but you get more pictures in that little time than you would get in a year of skating along the surface somewhere.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And that's why I just feel like when I'm in Calcutta, even though I'm big time on the outside looking in, you have this feeling because people are so warm and they just never met foreigners, and you can talk to anybody, and you're just like that in the zone for like a week. It's a freakish, and Jodhpur is cool, but there's more tourists in Jodhpur. So have you done much in India? Like have you done Rajasthan and?
Back in the day, I haven't been recently. Meditation was really what attracted me to India. So most of my trips were based on the Buddhist circuit or taking intensive meditation courses when I was there. I did spend some time in Calcutta and Mumbai, and those are interesting places to walk around.
So what year did you start the meditation thing?
2001.
Oh wow, in Japan.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which ultimately brought me to India and Burma. Yeah.
I know. I would love to get into meditation. I know especially after COVID, I have no focus, and my brain really got damaged during my focus. And because I met a couple people who were into. A few years ago at the beach, I met a cool American guy he had bicycled from Vladivostok to Lisbon, so he had some cred, and he was a major. He said, "Yeah, meditation changed my life." And he goes, "I go, how do I start?" And he said, "Close your eyes and concentrate on your breathing for 3 minutes." And I can't. I'm gone after so I know
there are other ways to practice. There are different kinds of minds that are more conducive to certain kinds of techniques. I think that one of the challenges in the exportation of mindfulness techniques, particularly from Burma, because most of them come from Burma, somewhat Thailand, other countries, but Burma is really the generator of a lot of these. Is that what kind of blew my mind when I came to Burma, when I came to live for an extended period of time, was that there were just so many different opportunities to engage in the practice. If you were, whether it was extroverted or introverted or intensive or extensive or service oriented or practice oriented or discipline oriented or just compassion based, and they weren't either or. They were really like, well, I study from this monk and I practice in this way, but my family brings this monk to the house. So the influences are just coming in, this multitude of ways that if you want to engage in the practice, you can really, you can find that kind of path that suits your mind and your purposes and your time, your station in life. How much time do you have to give, and how much are you willing to give to yourself to this to get the benefit? But you can't export that whole. You can't take that whole thing, copy and paste into another context. And so when early meditation teachers started to look for ways to give a taste of this, it was almost like they had to make the way I describe it is almost like Burma's this buffet table. And if you go to Burma itself and you're going for practice and you understand the different ways you can go and things that you could learn, and Burmese people, I think, intuitively know that because they grew up in the society, you can kind of have your empty plate and you could say, well, I want to choose a little bit of this, and I want a little of this, and I want a little of this, and you go back and you can eat off your plate. But when you're not at that buffet table, the teacher is collecting the plates for you. So the teacher is going around and saying, well, I have to go to the next room. The people in the next room, they can't come to the buffet. Let's say there are 30 different people in that room, and I have to somehow make a plate that's going to work for those 30 people based off of this buffet. So what's the most intelligent decision that I can make? When you're preparing that plate, of course, you're going to have your own biases of what you like to eat, the way that you like to eat, the way you think other people should eat as well. And even if you make the best decisions in the world, you're still accommodating very different people from very different contexts. So, so the process of exporting this meditation and bringing it, I don't want to be too critical, because I think in many cases they were doing the best they could with no roadmap laid out and no one to, we're standing on the shoulders of giants right now to be able to peer over and say, oh, you should have done it this way or that way. But I think that because of the respect that we owe them, there's also been a somewhat silencing and lack of critical nature in the wider meditation community to feel that we don't have the right to be critical, that we just need to follow in line with the way that things have been provided. There's a way to have respect and gratitude, and also to be able to look at, well, these decisions that were made in terms of how you prepared this plate and how you're framing it, they were decisions that were able to provide this, but they left out that.
Right.
And this is all kind of a long way of saying, if you're being told that the way that you need to approach meditation is this one method of, which would be anapana and concentrate on the breath, is to, concentrate, to focus your mind, which actually is involving intention and hard work, which, for a mind like yours might not be suitable, might be counterproductive. It might be going against the flow of the natural mindfulness and awareness that your mind would be predisposed to, that a teacher that had more wisdom and more background in terms of the different techniques might be able to provide that personalized instruction that's saying, and just like you're talking about the energy that you feel from photography and portraiture, you might have a meditation teacher that feels your energy as a student and as a practitioner, that's saying, oh no, don't do that concentrated mind focus now. Don't maybe later come back to that, but for now, let's why don't you focus, see what you're mindful and what you're aware of this, and start to work on that. An example or an anecdote that I've shared, we've actually done a whole podcast on this because it was an amazing story. When I was in Yangon, I had a room that was rented out for Airbnb, and it so happened that at one point this room was booked by a European businessman who was an absolutely raging alcoholic. I mean, we're talking leaving Las Vegas level of alcoholism. Like he was kind of on his last legs, and had a bender while he was staying. I don't drink. I don't put myself in places where there's alcohol. So this was not pleasant, to say the least, and we were looking at how to kick him out. There's a whole episode on this one can listen to, so I won't go into all the details here. It so happened that as we were looking at how to have him leave, he revealed that he had actually chosen to stay with me because he saw my meditation background as a host, and he kind of saw this as a last chance to help him. So I eventually found a Burmese monk in the countryside that spoke a little bit of English, and I explained the situation. I didn't, so I could have sent him to a structured meditation center, someone that would say, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this. I felt that, and if we were in any other country in the world, we would have to do that because there wouldn't be any other options. And those centers wouldn't take them. They wouldn't take a raging alcoholic. They'd take, someone who had already had their life in some sort of order
Right.
and then was planning to go to the next, this higher elevated state. But instead, and it wouldn't have been good for him. So I spoke to a monk who I knew was in the rural countryside, spoke limited English, and said and I had often corresponded with this monk when we had dedicated Western meditators in the country who wanted to practice intensively. I would call this monk and say, we have this person, they're from, US or France or Australia or whatever. They've been meditating this many years and they want to be able to, take a self course for intensively and continue their practice. So really refined, gentle, nice people that I'd send to him. So I call him up and I say, I'm going to be honest with you. This guy's never meditated a day in his life. I can't vouch for him. He's a raging alcoholic. It's totally unpredictable, but he's also on his last line, and I don't know how much longer he could stand. Would you accept him into your monastery, given how unpredictable this is, and given that you have to also have to deal with the authorities? You're going to have to be responsible for an authority that I can't even vouch for. With a voice of steel, he says back, absolutely. This is our Dhamma, our Buddha's teachings. They are to be shared with everyone in every condition. There is still, and I still remember him saying this. It gives me goosebumps. The monk said, "The clouds are shielding his sun right now, and that's all it is. And we will separate those clouds."
Wow.
And so I send him here, and and this, I'm thinking of this example because as this, he had one condition. He said he cannot drink alcohol when he's here. That's the only condition I set on him. He must agree to that. If he agrees to that, we'll work with him with anything. So I send him there. And why I'm thinking of this story with you is that he doesn't come and say, okay, now sit down for 1 hour and follow your breath. That's the way you have to meditate. How would that work? How would that be helpful? Right. Instead, he says, when you wake up, help me sweep the grounds. And it goes from that to let's wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when the monks wake up. Let's get up early and let's start with this good deed. And then so they're doing that, and then the monk starts to join them, and they're both sweeping, and just kind of pay attention to holding the broom and to what's around you. And then at some point he says, while you're sweeping, just kind of notice your breathing. Just be aware of it. Just be aware the breath is happening. And then let's just keep sweeping. And so then it goes from, you've been noticing your breath while you're doing this action. Let's just sit down and keep doing the action. This observation of breath you're doing, let's sit down and let's kind of see how that function changes. That's very different from this structured, exported practice that was taken out of the country and then applied as like a standard. Everyone must come. Everyone must observe the breath. This is the way you have to do it. This is the number of days and hours you have to do it for. Right. Again, I don't want to be in a place of having to fault this because I'm only where I'm at because this happened. But I do think that we could be of a critical nature and say that this is not a one. This might be where we want to get everyone to.
There's
but
not
this
one
is
size
not
fits all.
Right where you can bring everyone there and just say this is what you must do.
We're all different. I mean, you have to. It just seems like a no-brainer that something like that. So, what's if somebody wants to get into meditation? What's the best way in?
Well, back in the day when Burma was safe, that was where I was. That was the space I was engaging in. Is that I was helping kind of organically. I'd moved into a space where just from what I had learned about different Burmese traditions and different and kind of.
But like my girlfriend wants to go do that because she's super Buddhist. My girlfriend's super Buddhist, and I was like, but I don't know if that's if I get anything out of it. My friends are going to do 10 days. I'm like, wow. I had a friend try to do it. He said after 2 days it was just gone. He couldn't do it. You knew after like 2 days. How much time a day do you devote to it?
This is another question that when I get asked, I try to unpack because I think as Westerners, we have this sense of formal practice and living your life. And so often when I was in Burma, I would be asked the question of, these Burmese monks or normal Burmese people, like how much do they meditate every day? It's like, well, what are you counting as meditation?
Right.
Because we say meditation is this and everything outside that is not. And then there's other activities that we would, those are religious activities. well, are they religious activities? You know, is there a sense of mindfulness? Is the alms around a religious activity when you're walking barefoot, carrying a begging bowl and accepting whatever comes, and not just accepting it, but generating, if you're doing it right, generating a heart of compassion and selflessness and gratitude, and you're cultivating the mind. What is meditation but a cultivation of mind? So what's more important, the things that help to cultivate the mind wherever they occur, or the formal process of putting in those hours, you know?
Because like the most famous, it seems like Jerry Seinfeld's like the most famous, meditator, right? They're all into this TM stuff. TM is completely different, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but my brother does. I have five siblings, and one, he does yoga and he does meditation every morning, and he gets up at 4:00 in the morning. He does it. He said he can't imagine his life without it. He's not a hardcore meditator. He's more yoga, but he's got some meditation in there. But yeah, like I say, after COVID, I'm just so scattered, and it's just, I know it would be good for. I've had a few people say, "You need it," because I have some friends who are into it, and I think, man, you could really use it.
Yeah.
It's like a tool chest for you. I mean, so you did the full on living in a monastery for years and going out and doing all the alms and just.
I was never a monk, but I did live in monasteries for years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I lived in caves in Burma. Yeah.
Where?
Sagaing. Yeah.
Wow, good for you, man. Amazing. Because I knew a few, over the years I've met a couple. There was a couple of in Phnom Penh who'd been in Phnom Penh for a long time, but full-on monks living in the thing, but Western monks living in a Cambodian. And there's a lot in Thailand, right? There's a ton of. But again, Joe's great on all that Buddhist stuff. He's really super knowledgeable and remembers everything.
Yeah.
So you'll have a great chat with him. But yeah, I mean the whole Burma thing, and I have spent a lot of time the last couple of years thinking about it. Just after it kicked off in October a couple of years ago, I just started watching a lot of videos, and it's just this whole thing just came up. It was just a kind of a perfect confluence. I was just sitting there. I was like, man, this is something I could do. I could be good at it. I could volunteer. I'd be happy to volunteer, because I've always been looking for something to do in Thailand, as a volunteer. And that's the most pressing need. I mean, in the 70s, it was all on the Cambodian border, and a lot of my friends were out of that 70s, 80s scene on the Cambodian, the Khmer Rouge things in Sisaket, Buriram, that whole southern Isan. So it's kind of a very similar situation, but how it gets resolved, man, it's just like the future is just, Anyway, I'm very impressed with all you people who have a grasp on the Burma situation, because it's very complicated. I just think there's not many people who really grasp it,
Yeah.
Do you met many foreigners who speak Burmese?
There's a smattering, yeah.
Yeah. But it's hard, right? Burmese, I mean, it's opposite. Apparently, I think the grammar's opposite for Thai, because I just have, I've studied Mandarin, I've studied Cantonese, I've studied, and they all have the same grammar. So I'm always just taking the words and just, if I'm trying to say something in Cantonese, I basically translate from Thai. I don't translate from English, because it's the same word structure. But I think Burmese is different, right? Is the opposite.
Well, it's not so much the grammar that's hard for me. It's more, the hardest thing is the lack of learning materials. There's just there's decent stuff for beginner Burmese,
right?
But once you move into intermediate and especially advanced, there's so few stuff
right,
out there. Yeah, it's really hard.
Where's the best place to study Burmese outside of Burma?
Well, like Northern Illinois University has them. I think Chiang Mai used to offer different courses there. I would have to post-coup. I would have to look.
Yeah.
Pre-coup, there were courses that would be offered from time to time, but I think that's all changed with the coup. Yeah.
I think Cambodian was the same. There was no a lot of materials would have been. My next door neighbor, Jason Roberts, who passed away a couple of years ago, was probably the best Khmer speaker of any foreigner. They just incredible, and he learned it very quickly, and he was unbelievably impressive. I took him up. We're having a translation thing one time with an ad. I gave him a page of handwritten Khmer, and he just circled one word after, and I was just like, oh wow, that's just another level of skill, he said, I think this word's wrong, and then you realize, but I learned Thai. There was now people, all they do online is argue, but which which app to use to learn the language. I'm like, you can't learn a language from an app. You need to just get a book, a pen and paper, and you need to write stuff out over and over and over, and learn the sound and listen to people talk. And because there was one book when I started out, really that had been the Fundamentals of the Thai Language, 5th edition. I've been written in the 50s, and this is early 90s when I read it, when I learned. And my teacher, my first teacher of Thai, well, Joe was my first teacher because I learned all the stuff on the Lonely Planet, but I didn't know how to read. Then I did this course in Toronto from a polyglot who, this guy had never been anywhere in his life, Canadian guy. Spoke 30 languages. He was a professional polyglot. Like he spoke 4 dialects of Chinese perfectly. His Thai, Khmer, Laotian. I don't know if he had Burmese, but he had 30 languages and he just had a way of learning. And I went to and all these people trying to learn from karaoke, learning in English written, like I'm sure it's the same in Burmese. It's a total waste of time. And my first lesson, I learned 4, 5 consonants, and I learned 2 vowels. And I went home and I had this thing on my fridge, and it said Raka Sitbat. And I read a sentence in Thai after 1 2-hour lesson. And I was like, okay, that's it. Like it was only 3 words, but I read it. And I was like, okay, forget the karaoke method, forget all this transliteration, all this stuff. You have to just go to the source. And it was 24 hours of lessons, group lessons, and I could read I couldn't know what it meant, but I knew how, I could say a word the first time I say it correctly. But then it's a lifetime of learning how to do it right. And the tones, are a lifetime thing. But once you get the tonal thing, people have problems, they have problems with tones, but tones are the fun part of Thai. They're the fun part of Chinese because, that's when people start telling you, oh, you speak clearly. Because, I'm sure it's the same in Burma. Well, you get 50 words, people are telling you, oh, wow, you speak great. Yeah, oh, you can speak well. But they don't feel you speak clearly until you start. Cool anecdote. It's one camp. And some of the camps have quite a big Muslim contingent. And there's Buddhists, Muslims, and Christians. These camps are Buddhist, Muslim, and some are much more Christians. But I went to this tea shop. I was with TBC staff. We went to this tea shop, Muslim tea shop, eating samosas and drinking chai with these 2 really lovely guys. And this is when the whole USAID thing was going down. And they were very concerned, right? And the guy told me, he said, I don't know if it was family or it was somebody from the camp, had spent years in interviews going through the whole process of getting accepted to the States. They had gone to Bangkok. They had their tickets. They're about to get on the plane. Canceled, sent back to the camp. It's just the cruelty is just mind-boggling. I don't get it. That's not what like I say, I'm Canadian, but I've always been super pro-American. I'm not one of these, but I think right now this is just not what America, there's always things could be tightened up in the system. There's always fat in the system. There's always corruption. There's always things, but I just don't think destroying it wholesale is going to help anybody. And I think that it's creating opportunities for other people to step in and other interests to step in. And I think America will be back. It has to come back. I think this is, but just the cruelty, and there was the other story, like, people unplugged from their oxygen, come on, Anyway, I don't want to end on a sad note, but I think right now it's very concerning. I think there's going to be big need in that. But at the same time, I think there's positive changes coming. I think between some of these people being able to actually be accepted into Thai society and do jobs, they're amazing. The level, the optimism in these camps is really not what you think when you think of refugee camp. Like I say, always think of these things from the Middle East, of people just huddling in tents, No, it's not. It's a hustle, bustling town, full-on town. It's just that these people are stuck in this town. But between that and, I already had a couple, offers to go into Burma with people. I'm not going to do that. But I met, just out of interest, one other really interesting guy there, Father Ray, in a place called Umpang. Umpang is south of Tak. I'd never heard of it. beautiful city. It's kind of an adventure town now. A lot of rafting, and there's a lot of mountains there, and it's these kind of wild resorts. This guy, Father Ray, he's an Indonesian Catholic priest from Flores, who, I mean, I don't know if he's got a PhD. No, I think he's got a master's. He's an ordained priest. He went to West Africa. I think he was in where was he? In West Africa. He was in a French speaking somewhere. Learned French. Then went to Singapore and preached to the French community in Singapore. And here's this Indonesian guy speaking French with a West African accent to French community in Singapore. Then he's been up on the border for 10 years, teaching kids for free, basically. He got donors, built a beautiful church. So this guy speaks, well, he speaks obviously Indonesian, like English, much better than my English. Like he can talk about Spinoza, and like he's a major thinker. He speaks his Thai is fluent Karen. I don't know. I think he has some Burmese, and he's just basically gets a stipend. He has people supporting him for abroad, and he just teaches in like 20 or 30 government schools for free, teaching English to Karen. You know, like these are the people. This is why I love doing this kind of stuff. Yeah. You're not going to meet these people just going up in any other. If you're going with a business or going as a tourist or a traveler, backpacker, that's really the other reason I love doing NGO stuff. Is that especially the grassroots stuff. When I was working with CARE in Bangladesh, just kept getting handed down into these grassroots organizations where the energy is so positive, and you know, Christopher Hitchens. Do you hear about Christopher Hitchens? You know, controversial guy to say the least. But he said, you know, he always said, the cure to poverty is in front of our face. It's been there forever. The empowerment of women. This is the cure for poverty worldwide. And you know, Bangladesh, and he cites Bangladesh as proof of that. That, you know, and I saw that in Bangladesh. These grassroots women's groups doing incredible stuff. Just meeting these incredible characters like Maureen Gibb, you know, and you know, Father Ray, and you know that, like I say, going on these little excursions, even as a volunteer, is much more interesting than any holiday you can ever offer me. I can't think of a holiday I want to do, really. I just want to do this. So, like I say, any organizations hear this, ping me. You can find me, Ian Taylor. I'm the Ian Taylor in Asia. I'm not the one in Manchester, you know, the photographer. So, easy to find.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Before signing off, I'd like to acquaint you with Better Burma's online shop, where we feature beautiful handmade crafts from artisans across Myanmar. But these aren't just mass-produced items, they're unique, one-of-a-kind pieces that showcase the country's rich culture and traditions. Really, since the coup, many skilled craftspeople from Myanmar, they've lost their livelihoods and are struggling to support their families. And so by shopping with us, you're not just buying something special, you're also helping to provide these artisans with a chance to rebuild their lives and their families. Part of every purchase, on top of that, it also goes to support Better Burma's ongoing humanitarian missions. So we invite you, take a moment to browse the collection at betterburma.org/shop or alokacrafts.com. That's ALOKACRAFTS.com. And as always, you can support our work through a direct donation at insightmyanmar.org/donation.
Bodhava Yarananga Unyana Dadu Yadana Ganis Adamana, Vigada Besayana, Besayo. Oba Yarananda Dayananga Yaranaya Dayanam Bodhava Yaranam.